Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the BoundaryWise Academy and our lockdown webinar series. I hope you guys are all doing well and thriving out there. Difficult times, I know, but at the same time, there's always amazing opportunity to take advantage of. So those of you who've joined us, thank you so much. We've got folks from Barrie, we've got, let's see, we've got Sault Ste. Marie, we've got Brampton, we've got Mississauga, we've got Toronto. Amazing. I got a message on LinkedIn yesterday from a gentleman in Spain who's been following us as well and watching these. So absolutely fantastic. Great that you are being productive and you're using this time to learn something. So let's make a start today, okay? So today's topic is boundary due diligence. What is it and why should I make it part of every single deal I do? And so let's just make some switches here with screens. Let's make me a little smaller. That's better. So now you can see what really matters, the screens, the slides. So let's talk about boundary due diligence and what it actually means. Due diligence obviously is a term for doing research and understanding something in a deeper way. And boundary due diligence is just that. It's all about the boundaries of your property and understanding more about them as you go through a real estate deal, whether it's on the listing side or the buying side. So let's take a look and see. Let me just switch over here. Okay, here we go. So today's program, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to first of all talk about what boundary due diligence actually is. Then we're going to talk about how we do it. And we're going to do this at a bit of a high level. This is a 30-minute webinar, but how do we do it? And then we're going to talk about why we do it. And I think this is the real key to today is why do we bother? Why should we bother doing this? Why should you bother adding these processes, which by the way, are not arduous in any way, but why should we bother adding these processes to our real estate deals? And then what are the risks of not doing it? If we decide to not do it on one deal or all of our deals and just make it not part of what we do. And then finally, a quick recap of the BoundaryWise Academy for you. And that'll be it. That'll be 30 minutes well spent, I hope. So here we go. What is boundary due diligence? And I want to start off with an example because nothing paints a picture better than real examples of things that could go wrong or have potentially or have gone wrong. So this is a gorgeous property. I'm not going to tell you where it is. It's a wonderful executive property. And if you were to look at this property and just examine it just with your eyes, walking the property, you would believe, that the boundary of the property line was somewhere around where I've drawn the blue line there. So there's a tree line there you can see, and it's a gorgeous property. And as we take a look at it from overhead, there you go. That's the overhead view of it. And let's zoom in a little bit. And you can see that tree line on the west boundary and across the south boundary there. I think that's the south boundary, is it not? And so on. The rear boundary and so on. You've got an in-ground pool there and everything looks fantastic, right? Now, if we take a look at the survey plan of this particular property, I don't expect you to be able to read this immediately, but if we were to take a look at the survey plan, this is zoomed in right at the back of the property, the rear of the property. And what we can see here is in purple, a couple of buildings. This is a topographic survey with, on top, this is a topography with the survey. So there's a few trees there. And this is what's really important is the tree line at the back and going down the side. And what we see here is that not only is there a tree line, but what the survey shows us is that there's also a chain link fence that runs all the way down that side boundary that we looked at where the trees are grown. There's a chain link fence through there and a chain link fence all the way across the back of the property. So there really is no doubt as to where the owners of the property, maybe the previous owners of the property, believed the boundary location to be. If it was just a line of trees, you might say, well, it's just a line of trees. It doesn't necessarily mean that's where we think the boundary is. But if there's a chain link fence, for sure that's where people think the boundary is. And if you're an unsuspecting agent who's not interested in doing boundary due diligence and believes that boundaries are usually where the fences are, or the fence usually tells you where the boundary is, you're going to go along with this, right? Big mistake. Because what we've learned over time, and by the way, there's the swimming pool, what we've learned through previous series and through the BoundaryWise Academy is that when we look at a survey plan, the thick dark line is always the boundary. And in this case, that is the boundary of the property. And you should be saying at this moment, wow, okay, oops, what's that cutting through? That isn't exactly where we thought it would be. The point is, in this particular example, it is cutting right through the swimming pool. Not close to the swimming pool, it's cutting right through the swimming pool. And in fact, that area in red is not part of the property. And so what are you representing as the listing realtor? What are you looking at as the buying realtor, the realtor working with your buyer? Are you actually catching this stuff on either side? This is what boundary due diligence is all about. And if we superimpose this over the picture, over the overhead, this is what it looks like. That red area is not part of the property, and yet somehow, some time ago, somebody built a pool over the boundary. Now, if your client had asked you, if you're on the buying side and your client had asked you, find me a property, a beautiful executive property with a swimming pool, an in-ground swimming pool, and you said, I found you one, let's go, and you bid it, and they bought it, this would end up in a world of hurt for them. And it wouldn't do your reputation any good. So that's one of the fabulous examples. Before you all say, Chris, you know what, you're giving us these extraordinary examples, how many of them really are there? Wait a minute, I'll tell you exactly. So what is boundary due diligence? It's essentially a process of investigating and understanding a property's extent of title. And that's a term I really want you to get used to, is extent of title. Because at the end of the day, remember, you guys, you're all transacting land on which there happens to be a structure that people live in. Most people, when they're thinking of buying and selling, they're thinking about the home, the structure, what they're going to live in. And of course, that's only natural. But at the end of the day, they are buying land on which there is a structure. So your job could be, your opportunity could be to make sure that you have evaluated the extent of title of that land, that property that they are buying. So it's a process of investigation to understand a property's and validate a property's extent of title. And on top of that, identify any other issues, land-related issues, that might conflict with your client's expectations, be it on the selling side or the buying side. We're going to go through that in a little more detail in a second. Basically, what you're doing is you're understanding the land you're transacting. Simple as that. And to not do so is, I don't want to say it's unprofessional, but what I would say is missing an opportunity to add an enormous amount of value to what you offer your clients. So how do we do boundary due diligence? Okay, well, let's go to another example here. Those of you who are in the BoundaryWise Academy, you'll actually know that we use some of these examples as we go through, and we dig into them quite deeply. This is a gorgeous property on Lake Ontario. That's the lake in the background there. We're on the street here. This is the Google image of the street. And we have a 3-car gravel driveway at the front with a hedge and a fence behind it. And that fence on the far side, you'll see by the tree, cuts all the way down, runs all the way down to the lake. It's a gorgeous property, absolutely stunning property. And let's take a look at the survey plan. This is the survey plan of this property. And we're going to zoom into that area where the picture was taken. And there we go, zoomed in. And the picture that was taken, there it is, that's the area we're going to look at. And the picture was taken where that little green guy is, right there, looking down the page towards the lake. So let's identify a few things here. The first thing we're going to identify is the building. There's the house. The second thing we're going to identify is the gravel parking area. There it is right there. And there's also the fence that runs across the back of the gravel parking area and then all the way down to the lake. And the thick dark line is the boundary. There it is right there. Well, guess what? The boundary cuts right through the gravel parking area. In fact, that excess area there, that's the boundary. Sorry, that's the property right there. Everything inside the thick dark line, the boundary is part of the property, and everything that's outside is not. That area that's bounded by the red dotted line there is actually 4 meters and 15 centimeters wide. That's a heck of a lot. That's 3/4, that's almost 14 feet wide. Then it runs all the way from the front of the property to the rear of the property. Now we say it runs, that's the area that's being used by this property owner. And if you're an unsuspecting realtor on the listing side, all excited about this multi-million-dollar home you're going to get a great commission on, you might say, I don't need to do this stuff. I'm just going to go for it and get it listed, get it sold. And why would I even need to look at this kind of stuff? Well, you will see in a minute why. But this is the sort of thing that boundary due diligence catches. And it helps you add that extra layer of value to your client's experience that helps them avoid unfortunate situations for the seller and also the buyer, if the buyer's agent is also not doing boundary due diligence. So, and if we look at this is the survey zoomed out, that's the entire area all the way down to the lake. And you'll see that there's a chain link fence, there's rocks, there's even a little seating area there that they've built that they use. It's actually not part of the property. It's not for sale, and it can't be bought. It's actually city property. That's city property next door there, next door to the property. So let's get back to, oh, yeah, there we go. So if you look at that picture, that is not part of the property. Imagine the value you can provide your client on the buying side. If you can say, listen, I know you've fallen in love with this property, but through the lens, through the education that I've taken and this accreditation that I have, through the lens that I see this property, this is not part of it. Do you still want to go ahead and bid? They might say, yeah, let's go. Or they might say, no, I need that land. I was expecting to have that land. Let's move on. So how do we do boundary due diligence? So on the listing side, it's different on each side of the deal, right? And I know that each and every one of you, conduct deals on both sides. It's important to understand what boundary due diligence looks like on either side of the deal. So on the listing side, you're going to start, it's a four-step process. You're going to start off with documentation. You're going to start off always with the parcel register for the property and instruments. If any of these terms are unfamiliar for you, go back and take a look at some of the other webinars that we've done that go into more depth on these. The first thing you're going to do though is study documents. You're going to study the parcel register and the instruments for that property to confirm that the right property is being listed, the right legal description, the right location, all that stuff. That you're going to confirm the ownership. You're going to confirm that the people who are on the listing are actually on title for that property. You're going to confirm the land status. You're going to look for easements and other encumbrances on title on that property. And you can get these documents either from us at protectyourboundaries.ca or at GeoWarehouse, our partners at GeoWarehouse. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to study the survey plan. Please do everything you possibly can on the listing site to get a hold of a survey plan. And you're going to get that survey plan from, you're going to use that survey plan to confirm the dimensions and the frontage of the property. Now, I know some of you go to MPAC for that information. Some of you go to GeoWarehouse for that information. I would suggest you stick with GeoWarehouse because it's often a little more comprehensive than MPAC. It's not MPAC's necessarily main job to provide those frontages. Although they do, and they do a good job of it, I would stick with GeoWarehouse for a more reliable source of that. But if you can get a hold of a survey plan, that trumps everything in terms of dimensions. So you get to confirm the dimensions and the frontage. You get to look for encroachments on the survey plan. You get to look and see at the time that this survey plan was produced, were there any structures, any features that crossed over the boundary? So, and then easement location. Are there any easements and whereabouts are they? And how are people, let's take a look and see how people actually using those easements. So those are the documents you're going to examine. And obviously survey plans, your best option for that is come to Protect Your Boundaries, type an address in, and we'll show you all the survey plans that we have available from multiple sources, multiple surveyors. I think we have somewhere over 2.5 million surveys in our database. So, and by the way, you can also ask your seller if they have one, and you can also go to the neighbors. They might have one that covers multiple properties, including the one you're listing. So don't be afraid to start off there before you come to us. Once you've examined the documents and you've determined whether or not there are any suspicions that you have there, and again, you're just triaging this. We're not asking you to be an expert. You're just triage, looking to see if you have any suspicions based on what you've learned. Once you've done this, then you go on to a physical inspection of the property. And what you do is you, first of all, approximate the location of the boundary from the ties, the measurements on the survey. And you're saying, hang on, Chris, I'm listing this property. Why do I have to do that? Well, the reason you have to do that is because it could be that even the owner doesn't know that the fence is off by a foot, or that the garage that was built encroaches over the property, or that the shed in the back is 2 feet onto the neighbor's property. You just don't know until you do this exercise. So you're going to approximate the boundary location from the survey ties. You're going to look for obvious encroachments or suspected obvious encroachments. And you're going to also examine, once you've measured out approximately where the easements are, where the footprint of the easements are, you're going to examine how the humans are using easements. Oh my goodness, people are the worst for how they use easements. They take a lot of liberties with them. Now understand that once a buyer moves in, everything snaps back. There's no adverse possession. There's no grandfathering in of strange use of easements. The easement is what it is. It's designed for a specific purpose and has certain obligations and restrictions. The buyer that moves in has to adhere by them. And if your seller, on the selling side, has got a handshake agreement with a neighbor that allows them to do this or that, park a car, put garbage bins, hockey nets, whatever, on an easement that is supposed to be kept empty, and your client moves in on the buyer moves in on the premise or on the understanding that they can do the same thing, there's absolutely nothing stopping the next door neighbor from saying to them, nope, get your stuff off the easement. That's just the way it is. So understanding where the easements are and how humans are using easements is a really important part of boundary due diligence. And then finally, now you're putting your listing together. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Do everything you possibly can, we believe, to disclose all the features of the land, all the features of the property, warts and all, as they say in England, right? Say that, disclose everything. Everything you disclose is one less thing that can come back to bite you and your seller after the fact. Anything that you don't disclose has the opportunity to come back, either through a lawsuit or through a title insurance claim, and cause you and your client an enormous amount of grief if it comes to that. So disclose, disclose, disclose on the listing. Obviously, speak with your brokerage. All brokerages have policies regarding this, but ours, as professionals, as land professionals, as surveyors, our organization believes that to not disclose everything to do with the land is opening yourself up to some potential risks that you don't need to take and your client just simply doesn't need to take. And in the market that we're in, okay, we're in a bit of a weird phase right now, but generally speaking, land in Canada, property in Canada, particularly in residential areas, it'll sell. So sell it with a disclosure, with disclosure of any issues that you find. So that's on the listing side. Let's now look at the buying side. On the buying side, it's different. On the listing side, what you're trying to do is prevent trailing liabilities. You're trying to find everything you can about the property to disclose it and provide the documentation so that after the fact that somebody can't come back to you and say, you didn't tell me this, or you didn't disclose this, or you misled us on that, this issue to do with land, and as such, we're coming back and taking action against you. On the buying side, it's different. On the buying side, it's all about your client's intended use of land. What you're trying to do is determine, in spite of what the listing agent has put together on the listing, which you can't always believe, right? Because not every listing agent is going to go into the depth of boundary due diligence that you are. What you are going to be doing on the buying side is making sure that this property that looks fabulous on the listing, and maybe your client has gone and looked at it and fallen in love with it, that it actually, the land, the extent of title is accurate, and that the land will meet their desired uses, future uses. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you have to do with your client is have a discussion around boundary due diligence and title insurance. Go check out a previous video we've done on title insurance to understand how that conversation goes. But help them understand what title insurance is and how that impacts your and their desire to do due diligence and possibly dig up things that will help them make a better decision up front, but may get excluded from the title insurance policy if, in fact, they go ahead and purchase the property. So what you're really trying to do there is determine with the client how deep to go with boundary due diligence. From there, assuming they say, yep, go for it, let's go for it. I need to know everything about this property before we put a bid on it because I don't want to buy a property and then have surprises after the fact. Then what you're going to do is, similar to the listing side, get the parcel register and the instruments. You can get those from us. You can get those from Geo Warehouse. But again, you're confirming the property, the legal description, ownership status, easements, and other encumbrances. Same process right there. You're also then going to acquire a survey plan. Insist on it from the seller. If they don't have it, come to us, search our database, and tell the seller, or the listing agent, hey, there is a plan here. You're telling me there isn't one. You're just saying your seller didn't have one. But there is one available, please acquire it and send it to me. And if they still refuse to do that, then there's nothing wrong with you saying to your client, you know what, we need to invest in this because there may be some crazy stuff going on here that we need to look at. So come to us, acquire the survey plan. If you are a member of the BoundaryWise Academy, and if you've actually gone through the process of graduating, we'll provide you with additional help on that survey plan. If you send it to us and say, look, I just bought this for this property, do you see anything? We'll help you with that. So the survey plan confirm the dimensions and the frontage, look for encroachments and easement locations. Same kind of investigative processes on the listing side, but for a different reason. And then finally, the physical inspection. You don't have to be too overt about it. You don't have to have like the orange vest and the hard hat and the big rolly measuring thing that you see. None of that. But you can very discreetly use the survey plan and approximate where the boundary is from the location, the boundary location is from the survey ties. And again, previous video tells you how to do that. But the idea here is not to be definitive. Again, I have to emphasize, we're not expecting you to be an expert here. You're triage. You're like the triage team in emergency. They're not the physicians. They're not the experts who are going to treat you, but they're the ones who know a couple of things of how to figure out whether or not you need to be taken immediately inside because you're on death's door, or you can wait outside in the waiting room for 8 hours or 4 hours or however long it is, because your case is not life-threatening. Same idea here, right? You're just looking to see if there are any suspicions. So figure out where that boundary is roughly, look down that line and ask yourself, do I see anything encroaching over that particular boundary, over that imaginary approximate line that I've put out there? And we've got you back. Again, BoundaryWise graduates, we got you back. Call us, we'll help you figure that out. So look for obvious encroachments and then do the same thing with easements. How are humans using easements? Because the last thing you want is for your client, say your client's looking to bid on a property that has a mutual driveway. The driveway is maybe 15 or 10 feet wide, and the boundary is right down the middle of it, 5 feet either side. Well, there's probably going to be an easement there that allows each of the property owners on either side to be able to use their neighbor's portion of that driveway for the purpose of being able to get their vehicles in and out to the back. Maybe there are garages in the back of the property. In that case, you need to make sure that the next door neighbor isn't taking liberties with the easement, like parking a boat or an RV in the driveway. Maybe they've got an agreement with the current owner, but that doesn't mean that when your buyer moves in, that they're not going to want to be able to use the easement the way it was intended. And you want to make sure that you've looked into that and understand how are the humans using the easement, and how is that going to affect, is it going to affect your client's ability to use their land the way they intend? And so with all of this information on the buying side, you're going to help your client make a better, more informed bidding and buying decision. That's the essence of boundary due diligence. And listen, it doesn't have to take more than 15, 20 minutes. It really isn't arduous once you get into the habit of asking yourself these questions in your process. Okay? So why do we do it? We've seen some examples, right? Why do we do it? Well, here's another great example. Here's an example of a property where you've got a house on the right and a house on the left and a chain link fence, and everyone was convinced that the fence was where the boundary is. We were asked to come in after the fact because there was a dispute that the buyers fell into with their next door neighbor. The next door neighbor saying, nope, the boundary is where the fence is, and the new buyers saying, no, the fence is well in on our property. We're going to move the fence onto where we know the boundary to be from a survey plan that we bought from Protect Your Boundaries. Actual true story. So we went in to do a stakeout of the property, and what we determined was that that's where the next door neighbor believed the property line was, and those are our stakes that we put into the ground. That's where the boundary really is. Now, the person who was making a fuss over this, insisting that the boundary was where the chain link fence is the person to the left, the person at the house that doesn't have the car. They believe that their land went all the way up to the fence. The buyers on the right-hand side moved in, bought a plan and said, whoa, look at this, we've got extra land, we're going to move the fence. This is the kind of thing that could have been at least, I don't want to say avoided, but at least discussed prior to the fact. Does the next door neighbor know that the fence is not on the boundary? Simple question to ask the listing agent. I don't know how far you'd get with a truthful answer or not, but at least you're asking this question. You can say to your client, look, the survey plan says that the boundary is further over and this is where the fence is. How do you want to deal with this? The level of value you're providing by asking these questions and having these discussions with your client is immense. So there we go. So why do we do boundary due diligence? There is two basic categories of reason. One is professional, and the other is business. Listen, we're here to help you be more professional. We're here to help you build better businesses as well. So let's talk about both, okay? The professional reasons, you're going to drastically reduce the land and boundary related risks in every single deal you do. We're going to come back to that in a second with an alarming statistic. But you're going to reduce land and boundary related risks in every single deal. You're also going to reduce the likelihood of title insurance claims coming back after the fact on your buyer or your seller. And that's really important to you because nothing takes you out of the game faster than a title insurance claim, than being chased by a title insurance company. It's going to help you exceed your client's expectation of professionalism. Now, those of you who are on with us today, I know I'm safe in saying that you're part of the 5 or 10% that really do take your profession seriously. But there are 80,000 licensed realtors in Ontario, and a huge proportion of those, I think, would struggle to how do I say this? Would struggle to, this is going to be live on YouTube, right? Would struggle to actually justify that professionalism tag that you guys do. This boundary due diligence, doing boundary due diligence, helps you exceed your client's expectations of professionalism. And finally, it helps you maintain and justify your position in the buying and selling process. Look, I'm with you guys. I just purchased a house, and I would not have done it without my realtor. He is a phenomenal professional who looks at every aspect of the property and the deal, and he found things and helped guide us in ways that I know I couldn't have just using just technology. But your way of life is under siege. You've got travel agents, you've got financial planners, you've got appraisers, you've got real estate lawyers, you've got surveyors. Every one of these professions has been disintermediated or drastically disrupted by technology over the last 15 years. And yours is the last to not have been disrupted. It's going to come. If it doesn't, great, but at least you can prepare. And you can prepare by saying to yourself, look, chances are, if we go the same way that everyone else has gone as a result of big tech coming in, big tech disruption coming in, and disintermediating our current role, if that's going to happen, what can I do to make sure that I'm one of the ones that survive and thrive in the new reality after the fact? And if you speak to financial advisors, those who have thrived post disintermediation have been the ones that focused on value, not process. Those who focused on providing value, a value offering, rather than being the keepers of process, because process gets taken care of by technology in the future. It's what do you specialize in and what do you bring to the table that technology can't do? Here's the great news about boundary due diligence. Boundary due diligence is based on documents, parcel registers, survey plans that cannot be evaluated by technology, because these are sometimes scans of 30 and 40-year-old documents that are simple, and they are so different and complicated in nature. It's going to be a long time before an AI system can interpret those, let alone actually do a physical inspection of the property to see if they have any suspicions. This is a great way of future-proofing your career. So those are the professional reasons. Do it for no other reason than this: future-proof your career with the impending, many think, change and disruption that's coming to your way of life and your business. So that's the professional side. Now on the business side, oh, by the way, no, I told you I was going to give you an alarming stat. Listen, we did a research study a few years back, and we determined that in the GTA we did the study, but by the way, we've looked at the rest of Ontario, and the numbers do stack up, that in the GTA, out of the 1.2 million residential properties, of which around 90,000 are bought and sold every year, but 1.2 million properties, that 49% had one or more hidden boundary issues. Now, these were issues, the thresholds that we set were pretty tough. These were issues that we know people either went to court over, hired a lawyer over, or at least it took some action over. So things like fences being more than a foot off the boundary. A few inches, we didn't count that in this. We're talking about more than, I think, 10 inches in urban areas or a foot in rural areas. We're talking about driveways and decks and sheds and garages being over the property line, full encroachments, 49%. Guys, that means statistically speaking, half of the properties you transact this year are going to have one or more of these hidden boundary issues. It's an incredible opportunity for you, to lean into this, to do boundary due diligence and look for these things so that you can demonstrate to your client the kind of value that you're providing that your competitors are not. But this is a stat that you need to keep an eye on. By the way, you might say, some of you I know are saying, oh, but you know what? What about title insurance? Title insurance will cover all this stuff. Our research actually showed a secondary piece of vital information, and that is the vast majority of these hidden boundary issues, in fact, 85% of these, are expressly excluded from all 5 title insurance policies. So if you're avoiding boundary due diligence to protect a title insurance policy, understand that most of the issues that are likely to come up on your client's property are not going to be covered anyway. So why are you protecting that? Why are you avoiding doing good work up front? That's the question to ask. Okay, let's move on. So why do we do boundary due diligence? Business reasons, real simple. This is about being competitive. This is about being in an oversaturated market where there isn't enough business to go around all 80,000 realtors. Simple as that. 16 to 20,000 are inactive. There's a really good breakdown that was done a few years ago of how many deals are done by how many different agents. But listen, the fact that you're on this webinar means that you are going to, you are already investing in yourself, investing in this downtime, and investing in making yourself better. But if you adopt this methodology, and we do encourage you to join the BoundaryWise Academy, you're going to attract more leads because you have something to talk about that others don't. You're going to get more referrals, and therefore you're going to attract more leads. You are going to close more listings because when it's between you and 2 or 3 or 4 other agents, the client's going to say, this one had something the others didn't. I liked the BoundaryWise agent because they talked about something that the others didn't. The others all talked about the staging and the landscaping and changing the carpet and changing the paint and all this. This guy talked about that, plus all these other really important land-related things that we need to take into consideration. It's going to help you defend higher commissions. Your commission structure is under siege. I think rightly so right now. Maybe not for you guys, because you guys already provide the value that justifies that. But there are so many agents who don't, who simply are not worth the 5% that gets charged. Yes, I'll say that to you guys, because I know I'm amongst people who are just as frustrated at how some people reduce the value offering and aren't aware that you need to provide more value. But this helps you defend higher commissions. It helps you demonstrate that you are vital and are useful in the process and you are worth the money, like my agent is. And it helps you get ready for the disruption. I believe a disruption is coming. And even if it doesn't, you're going to get all these other benefits, but why not prepare for this disruption that's coming? And finally, it helps give you those specialty credentials. If you go ahead and take this one step further and go into the BoundaryWise Academy, it helps you get specialty credentials. And we know that most recently, the government came down with some pretty tough mandates on you to be able to actually demonstrate that when you say you're an expert in something or a specialist in something, you have the credentials to back that up. That's a good thing because it weeds out those who really shouldn't be in the business and helps focus the industry and the client and the home buying and home selling public on those who really are doing a fantastic job like you guys. So what are the risks of not doing, last slide guys, what are the risks of not doing boundary due diligence? Fairly self-explanatory, I think, but on the listing side, you run the risk of a failed sale because something comes up, the buying agent, FISA, the buyer finds something out that you didn't know about because you didn't look into it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're out, we don't want this. Failed closings. The gap between the sale and the closing is in jeopardy if they find something out that is actually not conducive and maybe should have been disclosed but wasn't. The buyer, once the closing goes through, the buyer or the seller sue you. And finally, a title insurance claim, you get dragged in. You do not want to get dragged into a title insurance claim, guys. You simply do not. And it's so easy on the listing side, just disclose, disclose, disclose. And you reduce the number of items that could possibly come back to haunt you after the fact. But those are the risks on the listing side. On the buying side, you run the risk of your buyer backing out of the deal. All the work you did to find them this place. How many other places have you looked at with them? Finally, they found a place that they love, but you didn't do the boundary due diligence up front. You spent an inordinate amount of time with them on the bid for this property. Then they find out that something is untoward that you didn't catch. They're backing out of the deal. That is such a waste of time for you. That is lost time, lost revenue opportunity for you. The buyer's use of land is not fulfilled. That's going to cause, after the fact, all kinds of badness to come back on you from the buyer who's going to say, I asked you to get me a place with a pool. I don't have a pool anymore, or whatever the case may be. I wanted you to find me a property where I could build a pool or a nice big piece of landscaping in the backyard, or in addition, I've just found out there's a hydro easement that cuts right across my backyard. How come you didn't know about this? And guys, in my opinion, that's indefensible. If you don't do the most basic, inexpensive boundary due diligence to make sure your client's use of land is satisfied. I hope I'm not being too harsh on you today. I know I'm in good company though. The buyer moves into a boundary or neighbor dispute. That's a horrible thing for your client to move into. And most of them are really easy to identify. The buyer sues. You don't want your buyer to sue you for misrepresentation. And finally, a title insurance claim. Yeah, you don't want to get dragged into a title insurance claim after the fact because you have been accused and maybe had prior knowledge of an issue that has turned around to become a claim. And on both sides, lost deals and commissions, reputational risk. Guys, this is a reputation industry. This is a referral industry. This is a review industry now, isn't it? Every time people go online, they're looking for reviews. It's a review-driven industry. You want good reviews, you don't want bad reviews. You run the risk of a diminished reputation online, which doesn't go away, right? It's there forever. Make sure that you're doing these things to help keep your reputation online and offline in pristine condition. And RICO liability insurance claims, they're expensive. We're not going to go into it today, but you don't want to get to the point where you're sued and your RICO liability has to come in and defend you because that costs you money, it costs you time, and it costs you reputation. Finally, lost referrals, or even worse. Buyers going online or sellers going online and just flaming you online. Not something you want. To recover from that is really, really difficult. So that's it, guys. I hope that wasn't too. It just seems like it was a little bit of a downer. I'm trying to. What I hope I've got across to you is that there's an enormous opportunity here, an incredible opportunity for you guys to step in and really thrive with this information, really thrive with this knowledge, and differentiate yourself from your competitors. And to that end, let's just have a quick summary on the BoundaryWise Academy, which I hope all of you today are going to go from here. Get the email from us with the promo codes. We're doing some really good promotions to help you get this now and pay later, whatever the case may be. We know times are tough. But please take a look at this because this is what's cemented. It's one thing to come to these free seminars, these free webinars. I'm glad you're here. We'll keep doing them. But take this to the next step and get the professional accreditation, the credentials behind you so that you can actually promote this and say, hey, I'm a BoundaryWise realtor and this is what it means. What is it? It's an online education program for Ontario realtors. You get to see lots of video of me. Oh, they say, really? We don't want that. 8 courses not taught by a RIO or RICO, 7 to 10 hours of video training with course notes. You take it at your own pace. Once you sign up, you take it at your own pace. You can do it all in one weekend. You can do it over a month or over weeks, whatever. It's your choice. Start and stop. You get personal teaching assistant support, and you get quizzes and exams all the way through. But I'll warn you guys, this is not the kind of real estate course where you can sit there and hit the space bar while you're watching Netflix. You have to focus. You've got to take notes because the exams are tough and you have to get 80% to pass. Now, you will pass. You're all smart people. When you concentrate, I know you will get this. It's not that difficult. But it's difficult enough that it actually requires you to absorb and learn. And I think that's an enormous amount of value to you. We're not looking for everyone to get this. We're looking for 10% to get this. That's why we're pitching this to you. So what you learn, here's a list of all the courses. If you want, go back and look at the replay of this video or just go over to BoundaryWise Academy and see them. We're not going to go through them, but these are the kinds of things you get really deep into, the title insurance, boundary disputes, easements and right-of-ways, and so on. That helps you add that extra layer of professionalism and knowledge to every single deal you do. What do graduates get? I think the most important thing that you get, aside from knowledge, is you get the BoundaryWise professional designation. And where's my pin? Here's my pin. I love the pin. Everyone loves a pin, right? That's your pin that you get. There's a picture of it right there. You get the pin. I know, it's a pin. But the point is, it's a symbol. The pin and the logo that you put on your business card and your website and on your for sale signs, that's a symbol that the public is starting to really appreciate as saying this realtor is above and they have actually gone above and beyond to educate themselves and understand boundary issues the way we would want them to, because we as home buyers and home sellers have no idea about this stuff. We're trusting our professionals to do that for us. You get hotline support for a year. What that means is, yeah, you get hotline support while you're taking the course. Of course, once you've graduated, you get unlimited support from us, from our team of specialists. You've got a survey you don't quite understand. You've got an easement issue you don't quite understand. You're sitting in a listing presentation with a client and you have a question, they've asked you a question that you can't answer about land. We're on the other end for you, assuming it's within reasonable business hours. The point is that we're there to back you up, and that's powerful. To have Protect Your Boundaries there and the BoundaryWise Academy behind you on all of this stuff means you're not out there on your own wondering, can I say this, can I not? We're on the other end for you. discounts off on a whole bunch of our products, a ton of promotion out there through radio, print, and social, and so much more. And we talked about this before. Why, from a business standpoint, you get more leads, you win more listings, you protect your commission rates, and you complete safer, you reduce the risk in your deals. It's a really good thing to do. So that's it, guys. We're done. Went a little bit over today. I'm so sorry. I hope that was valuable to you. And watch for the email. It's going to send you promo codes. You're going to get promo codes, or just head right over to boundarywise.ca. Check it out. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat here. We'll do another video after the fact and answer those questions. And so in the meantime, stay safe, stay productive, and we'll see you guys real soon. Okay, take care.